Welcome to Retro Scale Modelling. This is part 12 of the Revell USS United States, scale 1 to 96. In part 12 I'm going to be putting on the lower part of the Shrouds to complete the Shrouds and starting to rig out the lower half of the Mast. So let's jump into it, quite a lot to do still. So to begin with, I'm rigging out the bow jib here. I think that's what you call it, and there's three little cleats, no, four little cleats that you rig in here to make a diamond shape really. You secure it to one of your pulleys and just thread it through. So I would start at one end and secure that end, and then once I threaded it through, I left the other end loose before pulling it taut once they were all in situ. So once the thread's through one side, I wrapped it around the tip of the bow spiral here, then carried on to the other half to form the diamond shape, and then secured the tail end onto another pulley and just used a little bit of super glue once that was tied on to give it some stability. And that's all there is to it, that one. This is probably one of the easier parts to rig out. Next up is to prepare for the lower shrouds to go on, but first of all I'm putting in the main rat lines that run down onto the shrouds. This is why the shrouds have to go on now. Generally I would like to leave them until later for easy access onto the deck, but I'm at the stage now where I have to put them on. So to tie these lines on, I'm using the thickest part of the mast and working my way from the top down to the bottom. There's 5 lines on each mast to go on, so that's 10 in total on each mast, 5 on each side. At the ends I'm numbering them 1 to 5. Now this is quite important because it can get rather messy and confusing if you have all these lines just dangling around and you don't know where they should have went because you moved on to another part of the build. So if you're doing this, make sure you number them. As I say, I just numbered them 1 to 5 on each side so that one line corresponds with the other, so it's one continuous line and they can be moved into position and pulled taut together, and that's the most important thing. Before I carry on with that thought, I'm going to be jumping slightly ahead to prepare the main rigging line for the fore and main mast, and in order to do this I've had to make up some more pulleys, so I'm just doing that now, and those are secured on the cross trees here. Space is getting a bit tight now, as you can see, so you're going to have to be careful as you're going along now. There will be times when you bump things and things will break off. Just be as careful as possible when you're doing it. It can be a little bit frustrating though. So once I've attached the pulleys, I'm just using a couple of clamps to keep them in position while I'm tightening up the main running line here. It's best to tighten it up on the cross tree first before dragging it down or onto your anchor point, which is at the base of this mast. So I just run it down into the anchor point, pull it taut and secure it with some super glue. Now there's 4 in total, 1 for each side to do on this, so on the main and foremast. So now it's time for the lower part of the shrouds, and making up the pulleys here. Now the instructions say marry these halves up, 11 in total, but the actual slats on the unit itself there is 12, not 11. So you have to leave one off. Why that is I'm not 100% sure, but it's all the way through the shrouds. I would have liked to have put all 12 on, but you just don't have enough parts to do that. So once they were married up, it was a case of just lining up the rail of the shroud onto the platform that was put in early on in the build. I would cement the bottom part first leave the top part loose. You just want to make sure the bottom part's secure, because as you're working on it you're going to be moving these lines around, so you need movement. And there's another reason as well. I will be pulling these masts into alignment, and you can't really do that if it's attached, if the shroud is attached to the mast. So all 6 shrouds are going on, 3 on each side. It's a fairly simple process. Once the shrouds are attached and dried, it's time to pull down your rat lines, and this is where the numbering system comes in on its own. So I'm taking the last numbered shroud, so that's number 5, and I'm pulling it down, untangling it if it's tangled, and made sure that both ends have free movement, and I'm just securing it to the shroud pulley. Now I'm only securing one side at the moment, and the other side will be done later on and pull taut. This is why you need to have it free moving on each side. So it's time to attach the shrouds to the mast. Now I'm pushing this out a little bit, you can see the movement there, just putting it into alignment. So first of all, after I've used a little bit of cement, manoeuvre the mast into position, and then position your shrouds onto the mast. Now I'm using a pair of long nose self-locking tweezers here just to hold it together, but the mast will still naturally come forward. So what I do then is I've taken a paintbrush and I wedged it up like so to give its alignment, and let that dry thoroughly, and then the shroud will hold up the mast before going on to the actual main rigging of the rat line of the mast. And this also helps pulling it all into alignment, and that's the little trick I was on about earlier on, to pull it all into alignment. Now there'll be a case where some of your previous rigging may become a little bit loose if you pulled it taut and tied it off. That is an easy solve to fix, but just bear that in mind, that the rigging may sag a little bit when you do this. Once the shrouds are dry, you can see I've got a paintbrush on the main foremast, going down to the boom, securing it. I kept that there for a long time just to make sure there was no movement, because now I'm tightening up the rat lines. So it's the same as the other side, but this time I'm pulling everything taut and tying it off. Then I'll be securing that with a little bit of super glue so that it doesn't come off. Now if your lines do sag, what you can do is take a little bit of thread it around the mast and then around your rigging as well, and pull it taut, and that will actually tighten up your mast. So you're just pulling it towards the mast, and that should tighten it up. If you can't do it like that, you may have to replace one part of the rigging that sagged down. It depends how you want to tackle it, really. I prefer it this way. That way it's already attached, and I can just pull it taut if that's necessary. Before I carry on, I'm using Revell Aquacolor 09 Avsite, and this is for the mast at the rear of the ship, the jigger or spanker mast, sometimes they're called. So I'm just painting them in prep for them to go in. And Revell Aquacolor 381 Brown Silk, and these are for 4 booms that will go on the side of the hull to secure the sails if you're putting the sails on. Then it was back to the foremast, and I'm prepping now for the main steel rigging that goes onto the mast. So again, there's a collection of pulleys that I've had to make up, and these go on the cross tree, and once they're secure it's time to put on some lines. Now these lines run down the mast, but the location points for these lines are actually through the mast, hence why I'm using my threader. There's a pre-drilled holes on the mast to do this. So you just thread your line through, starting from the top and working my way down, and then instead of putting a new pulley on for this, I threaded it through an existing pulley, just to save a bit of space, because as I said before, it is getting a bit cramped in there, and I didn't want to have too many pulleys hanging from one area. So I use an existing one just to pull it through and to work the block that way. And once those main lines were in, it was time to put in the heavy duty jute rope for the mast. First of all, again, it's making up some pulleys, and these are going on the shrouds. Now there's a couple of little eyelets that you place them on, so make up your pulley. I'm using the thin thread here just to secure it. There is about 4-5 pulleys that you have to put on here. You will not get away with using existing pulleys on this, the way the heavy duty rigging is going to be run through. There's 3 at the top here, and this will set the rigging into a V shape for it to run down to the bottom of the shroud. So I've taken one end and pulled it through, and then taken it to the bottom of the shroud, adding the knot, and going to be securing to the deck, so it's all completely loose at the moment. Now I'm just making up a little loop here to secure it to the deck. These get held on with the capstans that I put in early on in the build next to the cannons, and it's up to the person how to do it, but you really want a bit of hanging rope to come from the cannons to look a bit authentic. So I'll just make up the loop then to secure it onto the capstans at the side here, and then I can pull it all through. It's worth taking note as well that there is a pulley that gets put on at the midway point of this, and then you pull up your rigging from the shroud upwards, so you can just about make it out. And the reason for that is it actually goes into a loop. So once the top V formation is made, there's a pulley in the middle there, and then you secure your bottom line and run it through the pulley one way down into the bottom, loop it around and come back up at the top, then down again to your bottom pulley, then tie it off. Sounds complicated, but the illustration in the instruction is very well defined and it's quite easy to follow. If it helps, you can actually secure the line on the pulley with a little bit of glue before you go on to the next stage, just so that it's going to keep taut. But you should end up with 3 lines going down to the bottom pulley of the shroud. So once that's all done, I'm just securing it now with a bit of super glue before tying off any loose ends. Well, this is going to bring part 12 to a close. I'm going to be doing the main mast and the mizzen mast in the same manner as I done the foremast. So it's a bit repetitive, so there's no need to show that as well. You can go back to the channel and look at the other parts of this build to see what's going on if you haven't done so already. And also you can check out all my other builds on the channel. Hit that subscribe button for any upcoming updates on this build and any new builds in the future. Also hit that like button and leave a comment if you wish. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.